Hey friends, it's Sarah from She's Crafty and She Knows It, and today we're going to make the cutest hand knit bow blanket. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to be using 6 skeins of this Bernat Blanket Big Mystical yarn. This is the candy pink color. Like always, I will link all the supplies I'm using in the description below this video. So we're going to go ahead and find the end of the yarn. Usually there's an end kind of tucked in somewhere. Sometimes it's easy to find, sometimes it's not. But what I wanted to show you is normally there's an end. I'm going to take this little wrapper off. It's okay if it busts, we don't need it. This is kind of the end that is just wrapped around the outside of the skein. If I start knitting with this, it's totally okay. It's the easier end to find, but it does mean as I'm pulling on the yarn, this ball of yarn is gonna be rolling all over the place. So I'm sitting up in my bed right now. It's gonna roll all over my bed and eventually fall off, which is kind of annoying to me. And so I normally just wrap this around the outside, and there's actually a loose end somewhere inside the skein, and you can be drawing from the inside the whole time, which means the ball won't roll around. It will actually stay steady. So you kind of pull, you want to pull gently, you don't want to break the yarn. You kind of have to pull a chunk out of the center of the ball of yarn. So I got a big chunk out, and now there is the actual end, if I can find it. Let me get to it. So now here is the end that's from the inside. Hopefully that makes sense of the skein. So there's still the other end that's wrapped around the outside. Which, like I said, if it feels easier to you, you can use that. I just like that now I can set this to the side of me on my bed and be pulling from the inside the whole time. It's not going to make it roll all over the place. So I'm going to set it a little bit off to the side. Okay, so I have my end right here. I'm going to make about a 12-inch tail. It's just going to be the end that we don't use. It's just going to kind of stay right there. So I do about a ruler length. And then right at 12 inches, I kind of pinch it between my thumb and my pointer finger. I'm right-handed, so I'm doing it on my left hand. That way I can use my right hand to kind of wrap it. So you're going to wrap it around 2 fingers. I wrap it around the top side of my finger first, then the underneath, and kind of crisscross it. You're just making a slip knot. So if you're familiar with it, just a slip knot. Now I'm going to stick my other fingers, my other hand, through the loop that I made and pull the yarn through. Not the loose 12-inch. That's going to stay. We're not going to use it. But you're pulling a loop from my big ball of yarn over there. And then you can kind of pull the tail to make a slip knot. This loop's a little bit too big, so we're going to kind of pull the yarn, make it a little bit smaller. We want it to be about 2 fingers. I don't do a full 3, so about 2 fingers big like this. I'm going to do it one more time in case you kind of got lost. So I measured just with my eyes about a ruler length. I pinch it between my thumb and my pointer, and then I wrap it around the top side of my fingers towards the front, coming towards me, and it's kind of a loop like this. I stick my fingers through the loop and pull to make a slip knot. And then, like I said, it usually is too big. I kind of pull on it to get it about a 2-finger width. Now I'm going to stop right now and say this is definitely a beginner level, kid-friendly craft. I would say ages 10 and up as far as kiddos go. Our 11-year-old daughter just made her very first hand knit blanket over the Christmas break. It's beautiful. She did a great job. And she didn't have any hand knitting experience. I showed her how to do it real quick, and she did the rest on her own. So definitely ages 10 and up can do this. No knitting experience required. Now, when it comes to the loop size, like I said, I do 2 fingers. I get a lot of questions about how many skeins of yarn to use, how big of a blanket is it going to make, how many loops to do. All those questions are great. They're hard to answer because how many loops to do, which we're going to do a chain stitch. It does matter how thick your yarn is, how big of loops you're doing with your fingers, and how big you want the blanket. So for me, I'm doing 2 fingers. Like I said, if you're a kid, your fingers are probably smaller than mine. Your loops are going to be a little bit smaller, so you might need more yarn. If your fingers are bigger than mine, or you want to do big, like 3-finger loops, that means you're going to have more kind of gaps and open spots in your blanket. You might need less yarn, and it works up quicker because the loops are really big and loose. So for me, I'm doing, I would say it's a loose 2. It's not like they're shoved in there, but about a 2-finger loop. I'm going to do probably, I think I'm going for 30 loops in my chain stitch to get a good width. It's going to be a throw blanket, so a little bit bigger than a baby blanket, but not like a full queen size blanket or anything. So I plan to do 30. I normally recommend between 20 and 30 loops on your chain stitch for just a nice throw blanket. And it does kind of depend, like I said, how thick your yarn is and how big your loops are. So now that we have our first loop and our slip knot, all we're going to do is take the loop like this. You're going to stick your fingers down through the opening of the loop and pull up, not this tail. This tail, like I said, we're not going to use it. It's just going to stay there. You want to pull up the yarn that's attached to the big ball of yarn and pull it up through the loop, and this creates a second loop. I kind of stick my fingers through it so that I know it's not like this and huge. I want mine to be about 2, a loose 2. So that gives me 2 loops. You can see 1, 2. Each loop kind of creates a little hump like this. Okay, so 2 loops. You can kind of pull on it if you want it to be bigger or smaller. I'm going to stick my fingers down to the second loop, grab the yarn, pull it up. There's loop number 3. So I'm going to keep going and get 30 loops doing it that way. So down, pulling it up, that's 4. Down, pulling it up, that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let me kind of show you. So you can see each loop, like I said, kind of, I'm going to put it right here so you can see. I want to try to hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm going to keep going and try to get to 30. Okay, I want to stop and show you real quick what 20 looks like. So this is 20. I'm sitting like crisscross applesauce, and it does kind of cover my knees, but I definitely want it wider. So like I said, I'm going to do a full 30. Okay, so I have my 30 loops now. I recommend before you get started to go back and double check, like double count your loops. Make sure you know what number you have, because every now and then I like to stop and count how many loops I have. Say you're 10 rows up, I like to stop, make sure I have 30 loops and I didn't drop one somewhere, because then it's kind of a big mess and you have to figure out how to fix it. So I'm going to double check I have 30. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to kind of scoot it so you can see better. This is my 30. So what we're going to do is we're going to do one more loop, but this is actually going to be the loop for the second row. So it's important that you do it this way, that you want to do one more loop. So we have 30. We're going to do one loop out of the 30 and we're going to pull it up. So we don't want to do it this way and it be loop 31. We want to do a loop and pull it up. This is our first loop of the actual like first row of hand knitting. So that's one. So I pulled it up. It's about 2 fingers wide. And then you go and you find the next hump. So it's kind of coming out of loop 30. So I find the next hump next to it, which would be loop 29, and you're sticking your finger. So now that I'm going to kind of try and pull it closer. So now that it's kind of all knit like this, you have these little humps, and what you're doing is loop 30 is different because it's kind of a full open loop. But when you go on to loop 29 and you're working backwards, you want to find the little hump at the top. It's just one little piece of yarn, and you want to stick your finger right underneath it. So hopefully that makes sense. I can kind of see each one. So that's loop 29. Loop 28 is right here. You don't need to know the numbers of your loops. I'm just doing that to make it make sense of where I am for you. So I can kind of pull it and see right here. So we're going like this. That's all you're doing the rest of the time, is finding these little humps and going underneath it and pulling the yarn. So like I said, this one is the first little loop. It's coming out of my 30th chain stitch. I'm going to go to right where 29 is, find this little hump, stick my finger underneath it, and pull this yarn through. And like I said, I'm using 2 fingers, so you don't want to pull through and do like this. First of all, if your loops are tiny, they get pulled out easily and lost. So I want to pull it through pretty decent. I want it to be about the size of the one next to it. 2 fingers. Okay, now we're going to go to the one next to it. You want to make sure you don't skip, because it's going to make the blanket look really weird and things are going to start falling apart. So make sure. So in the beginning, you might want to keep track. 1, 2, coming back. I'm going to the next little loop, pulling it through. It's 2 fingers. Then you go to the next hump. It's easy to tell. Sometimes people get confused. So I have my 3 loops going up. People get confused because right here is the edge of the hump that we just went through. So you don't want to go through there again. You can see because the working yarn, the yarn that's attached to the ball of yarn, is already going through there. So we don't want to do the same spot again. So you want to go, okay, I can see the working yarns right there. We don't need to go back through there. Find the next hump, which is right here. Pull it through, 2 fingers. Okay, so now we're going to go. I can see the next hump. Put your finger through, pull it through, 2 fingers. Okay, so you want to make sure as you're going, you want to make sure your loops are staying about the same size, that everything looks good. So every now and then I just go back, make sure my loops look good. Okay, go back, and now we're going to go to the next loop. Stick your finger through. Once this first row goes, it's a little bit easier. So stick it through. And really, guys, doing the chain stitch in this first row of loops is the hardest part. Once you get this part down, the rest of it is easy, and you're just working with these actual bigger loops the whole time. It'll be easier for you to tell what you're doing. So if this seems overwhelming, please don't stop and give up. This part is the hardest of the whole thing. I promise you can do it. Okay, so I can see my next little hump coming through. We're just kind of making the first row of loops that we're going to work with the whole time. And so you just kind of have to do this weird process to set it up, but it's totally worth it, I promise. So like I said, we're going through. I'm just finding each little hump. I'm pulling it through. Now I need to pull a little bit more of this yarn out of my ball over here. Now, once you've done this a couple times, even my daughter, after doing, I would say 4 rows, she turned on a movie and sat there and watched a movie while she made the whole thing. So it's something you can do. It's such a cozy craft to me. Even if it's spring or summer and you're just wanting a cozy kind of craft, you can turn on a movie, sit on the sofa or in your bed, and just knit away. It's kind of one of those like monotonous, you don't really need to think about what you're doing. Once you get past this chain stitch in the first row, you just keep doing the same thing, and it's just, you can listen to podcasts or watch movies or do whatever you want. Okay, like this loop, it looks kind of big. I can tell that my working yarn already went through it, so I'm going to go to the next one right next to it so that I don't do 2 loops in the same spot. Almost done. I'm going to kind of scoot it. I'm trying to keep it in focus here. So when I get to the end, you can guess what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop and count my loops to make sure I have 30, that I didn't accidentally skip a little hump somewhere and drop a loop. You don't want to do that. You also want to make sure, like I can kind of tell, let me show you. See how nice and big these loops are down here? I can see each loop so easily. Something kind of happened. I feel like right here they got small. These last 3, I'm going to undo them. Do them one more time. You can definitely undo spots if you find something's messed up, it's not the way you like it, you can undo it and redo it again. Okay, so let me kind of lay it out so I can count all the loops. Sometimes you'll notice once you add loops, it seems like it grows a little bit in width, which kind of is another reason it's hard to decide how many chain stitches to do. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Okay, we did it. We have 30. All we're going to do now is work back this direction, and now it is much easier. So I'm going to scoot it so that hopefully it's easier for you to see right here. So now we have the working yarn. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and pull out a little bit more. Okay, now instead of having to find the humps, you're just going through the loops. So now this is where it gets easy. So you're finding the first loop, sticking, I just stick 2 fingers through it, 2 fingers through it, pull it through, and this starts the next row, just like that. So now you go, and so instead of going through that same loop again, you're going to go to the loop next to it that's down lower. You can tell this is the second full row of stitching. This is the first one. So now we go to the second loop, pull it up like this. There's our second loop on the next row. So I don't really call the chain stitch a row, it's just the chain stitch. So we've done 1 row of loops, so this is the second row. So now we're going through loop 3 and pulling it up. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind, every now and then my daughter was kind of having trouble with this. Let me show you. If for some reason, it's kind of hard, you have a lot of excess yarn back here. If I stick my fingers through loop 4 and I kind of grab here, I'm not pulling it taut, I can pull through and do a loop like this. Okay, so look, I have 4 loops. From the front, it looks pretty good. 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks good. But when you lean it over and flip it, I know it's hard to tell with all the colors and stuff, but in the back, there's like all this extra loose yarn because I didn't pull it tight enough when I did the loop. So let me undo it and show you. So instead of just grabbing somewhere, like if you stick your fingers through and you grab a random spot and do that, it's going to be weird and too loose in the back. So you want to make sure you're really pulling the yarn right close to where the last loop came out of the spot next to it and pull it up. You just don't want to also, this is a common mistake and easy to do, is pull the yarn so tight that when I pull it up of the loop next to it, I've pulled it out of the loop that I just did. Hopefully that makes sense. Those are the common mistakes I see. So you kind of want to pull your yarn And it might be easier for you, or you find easier if you kind of do a loop and then smush it down. Then stick your finger through the next loop and kind of pull that yarn so you know it's taut in the back and not just a huge loop hanging back here. Pull it taut and up, and now I know that I didn't make this loop really small. It's really easy when you do the next loop to, like I said, pull the yarn from the previous loop and make it too small. Okay, so that's loop 4. So let's say if I hold it like this, stick it through loop 5, pull it. That's probably a good way, especially if you're a kiddo doing this or it's your first time, to kind of ensure your loops stay the right size and you're not accidentally making big spots on the back or having random little loops that are too small. So now I'm on 6, and you're just going to go all the way across. So I think I do kind of instinctively just hold it in a lot of places. I'm kind of pushing on it to just make sure nothing kind of comes undone or loosened while I'm doing each little loop. Like always, if you have any questions or concerns, you can drop a comment below and I will try my best to help you out. Or you can send me a message on Instagram with a picture so I can kind of tell what's going on if you're having issues. My Instagram handle is She's Crafty and She Knows It. Okay, so I'm kind of putting it across me. I'm going to count. Like I said, it's kind of grown in width. It's a good size. I'm going to go ahead and count, make sure I have 30 loops again. Okay, all we're going to do now is just keep going back and forth, just like we just did. So nothing different. I'm going to pull out a bunch of working yarn. Okay, so now that we're at the end of this row, one more common mistake I shall make sure you don't do is it feels weird to go back through the loop that we just did. So remember, we finished. I'm going to undo it, so don't get confused. This is now loop 30 of this second row. And really what you need to do is go through that loop again. So one more time, I'm going to undo it and show you. If I didn't stop to just talk to you for a second, what I would do is, this is the first loop. I've done loop 28, 29. I would go through loop 30 and go through the same spot again to do loop 1 to kind of start over a new row. If you don't do that and you just go to the next one, it leaves this weird loop just hanging off to the side that's going to look really goofy. So at the end of each row, like I said, okay, this is the second row, this is the first row. I need to do one more loop. And then to start the next row, you have to do one more loop in the same spot. You only do that at the ends just to start the new row to go back across. Hopefully that makes sense. Just that's why it's really easy to kind of drop loops and add loops. So just make sure, especially if you're starting, I would recommend counting your loops, honestly, probably every row. If you're used to doing it or you've done a few, then you're probably good. But you definitely don't want to add a loop or drop a loop and kind of get sidetracked. Okay, so I will come back when I'm at the end of this row and we can kind of start a new row one more time together. Okay, so I'm at the end of row 3. I have 2 more loops to do. So I'm going to do this one, and then the very last one completes the row. Now we got to start back and go back through that loop one more time to start the next row. Okay, so now all I'm going to be doing is going back and forth, and I will come back when it's time to add a new skein, when we kind of run out of yarn from this one. Okay, so I kind of want to stop right here and say it's easy to start doing bigger and bigger loops as you go, which kind of makes the bottom pulled real tight and your blanket will kind of be shaped like a trapezoid of sorts. So you kind of want to make sure you're keeping your loops the same size, everything's consistent. That's why you don't want your chain stitch super tight. You want the loops to be the same size you're going to be doing throughout the blanket. Just keep your looping size consistent. That's the biggest thing I can say, the biggest word of advice. So I have finished one skein. This is the end of the skein, and I'm in the middle of a row, and so we need to attach a new piece of yarn. Now this is where some of you who are used to hand knitting are going to come at me. There's a very popular method right now using a lighter, and so you kind of find the end. It's hard to see. In this yarn, I'm going to cut this end. In this yarn, it's white, and there's kind of like a little, it's kind of the little threading that all the fibers are attached to. I don't know if it's going to show up very well. It is not the easiest to find. You can feel it. I don't know if this is going to show. I don't know if that's showing at all, but it's a tiny little white dot. You can kind of feel it. So what a lot of people do is cut both ends, find the little white thing, you light one with a lighter till it heats up, catches on fire a little bit, and you smush them together, and it melts the fibers together. You're wanting to melt the middle white part is what they're doing, not just all of the yarn fuzz, but the actual like little core of the yarn, this little white thread. They're melting that and putting it together and kind of fusing it together. My problem is that it's, first of all, it's not that easy to find the cording, for me at least, in this Bernat Blanket Big Yarn. It's in there, but it's easy to kind of just melt the fibers, and then when you pull it, it comes apart. So to me, it's not the easiest with this yarn. It also releases fumes, which I don't love, and I don't like using a lighter inside for something like that. I also try really hard to make my crafts kid friendly when I can, beginner friendly when I can. And so obviously, since my daughter and kids her age are wanting to do this craft, I'm not going to be using the lighter method. If you're interested and you're an adult, not a kid, you can go look that up and find that option. But for me, we're going to be just doing, we're going to tie it together in a knot. I know, don't don't come for me, please. I know there's other methods that people like better. This is the easiest one. It's the way I taught my daughter. I just think it's the safest. So for this yarn specifically, since it's so fluffy and we want to hide the knot, what I do is I kind of feel for that threading in the middle. So I help my daughter with this part, cutting it down. It's going to make a little bit of a mess, but I just cut all the fluff off. So I'm cutting it down. It's going to kind of like leave these weird little chains of fluff. So you don't want to cut the actual threading. So I'm holding, I can feel the white cording. It's like a little white cording inside the yarn. You want to hold that so you don't cut it. And you're kind of just trying to get all the fluff off so that you can tie a smaller knot. Otherwise, it's going to be really big and bulky. So you're just kind of dwindling it down. You don't need to be able to like see the white cording. It doesn't have to get that close to it. But you just kind of trim it, trim it, trim it until you get it pretty small like this. I know this method is messy. Even though it's safer than the lighter method, it is for sure messier. Okay, so now I have this one cut down. We're going to do the same with the next one. I'm going to try and do better moving it to the side. Let's see. So I'm holding the white cord. Like I said, I can feel the white cording in there. You should be careful that you don't actually cut the white cording, otherwise it kind of defeats the whole purpose. You want it to be there because that's the strong part, the center part of the whole yarn. If you are a kid, you know, definitely ask an adult if you need help with this part. I'm using pretty sharp little pointy scissors to cut well. So if you're using like kid scissors or something like that, it might be a little bit harder to cut through all the fibers. You, of course, could just tie big, bulky knots if you're a beginner or you're a kid and you don't really want to do it this way. And you could also Google or look on YouTube. There are other options. Some people like don't do it together at all, don't tie in knots at all, and they kind of weave in the ends. Some people kind of sew the ends together with a needle and thread. So there's definitely different options. I've just found this to stay really well. It does not feel big and bulky because you're cutting down all the bulk of it. If you want to spin longer, you could definitely trim it down even smaller and smaller. Okay, so this is pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead and use these ends and I'm going to tie them. So you do want to make sure that you leave enough room. You need to trim off enough that you can kind of have a good spot. Okay, and you're going to want to pull it as tight as you can. I'm not double knotting it. I'm just knotting it one time. Kind of pulling both directions on it. This is not something you want to do like a stress test with and see if you can pull it apart, because you probably can, but it's not going to get that much stress on it when it's knitted into a blanket. Same with the lighting method with a lighter. I've done it multiple times, and if you yank hard enough, I'm able to break it. So this is not like a, let's see if we can undo it. How strong is it really? It's going to be strong enough to stay fine in the blanket, just like this. Okay, so do it like that. If you want to put a touch of like some kind of super glue, crafting glue, you definitely can. I know people complain that when it's knotted like this, you feel a hard knot, but when I do the lighter method, it still makes kind of a firm, hard knot in there as well. So to me, this is just as good. Safer method, no bad fumes, no danger of lighting anything else on fire, especially if you're a kid, but even if you're an adult, maybe you don't want to do the lighter method. Okay, so now it's together. When you fluff it up, you can see, I mean, oh, this is a little loose phrase. It looks good. It is joined. It looks good. Everything is good to go. And we're going to go on and keep going, and you just use it, keep going right through and just keep knitting. We're going to go back and forth. And so all we're going to do is go back and forth, adding more skeins that same way. Every now and then stopping and counting your loops to make sure you have the same number that you've had the whole time. And then I will come back when it's time to cast everything off when we're all done. Okay, so when you're getting near the length that you want it to be, or you're realizing that your yarn's kind of coming to an end, you need to stop. You want to make sure you have plenty of yarn left. I have like a whole little ball left to kind of cast it off and finish the blanket. So I'm talking about 6-7 yards, plenty. You don't want it to be too little because it's going to make it really hard to close off the blanket. And so definitely be mindful of how much yarn you have left. You can measure if you need to. Make sure you have plenty. Now on this last row, I made sure that the loops, I've continued to do a full like 2 finger. You don't want these to be shrinking as you're going and have tiny loops because it's going to make the close off process really hard. Okay, so what we're going to do, instead of just like closing it off right now, we have our first little loop. We're going to go ahead and add 1 extra loop just to the first loop. So it doesn't matter which side you're on. You can finish on either side. You don't have to be on the left or the right, but wherever you are at the end of the row, you want to add an extra loop. So almost like you're starting another row again, but you're just going to do an extra loop just in the first spot. This gives it more of a square shape over here versus it being like a weird curve and kind of pulling. Otherwise, it's going to pull it tight and make it curved on this side, and then it'll be square on the other, and it's going to look kind of goofy. So do the extra loop. Now what you're going to do is take this loop and then do the one next to it. So you have 2 loops on your fingers, and you're going to pull. I have this extra. This is like the working yarn. It's all we have left. You're going to pull a loop through those 2, just like this. See how it has a nice square shape? Okay, so now we have this loop. These loops need to be a good size. They can't be super dinky or it's going to pull it really tight and look weird. And you're going to add the loop next to it, just like this. And you're going to take the yarn and pull it through to make a new loop. So you're going to do that all the way down. So you're doing 2 loops on your fingers, pulling the yarn through, and you're always pulling the yarn towards the outer edge of the blanket. So now I have this loop, you're finding the next loop, and then I'm pulling the yarn through it towards the outer edge that we've already finished, like that. So it's giving it a nice edge, and we're just going to keep going all the way down the blanket like this. Now say you get to the end and you realize you didn't save enough yarn for this process. It does kind of use up a lot of yarn to close it off this way. It's okay. I know it really stings to undo things, but if you get halfway and you realize there's no way I saved enough yarn to bind it off all the way, just undo what you did. It's easy to undo and see where you are, and then undo your last row all the way across, and then start closing it off from the other side, if that makes sense. It just happens sometimes. I can't tell you an exact amount of yarn that you're going to need to close it off because it depends on how wide your blanket is and how big of loops you're doing and all those other factors, but it's definitely better to save extra yarn than to get to the end and realize, oh no, I only have 1 yard left and I can't do anything with this. So I always try to end a little bit sooner and just earlier. That way I know I have plenty of yarn to work with. See, I have this loop, and my very last loop over here, you're going to pull the yarn through, and instead of pulling it all the way out, I like to leave a loop right here. So now I have 1 loop left, and then I find the end, wherever the end of my yarn is, and I like to put it through that loop and pull it, and it kind of creates a little knot. You don't need to do a huge, big, bulky knot. That will really finish it off very nicely. Now you want to pull hard with this, but like I said earlier, when you're tying the knots, you don't need to like really yank it because you might break the cording inside. So it makes such a nice squared edge on this side, and like I said, the side that we started with also has a really nice squared edge. It gives it a really good shape. The top has this kind of braided knit pattern on it. It looks good from the front. The back looks good. It's just a really easy, quick way to kind of close off the blanket. So now we have this long kind of tail that's left. I didn't need all of it, so I have plenty of left. I just kind of weave it in and out. You don't need the whole thing. So really you could cut like, leave a foot maybe. And you can weave it in and out however you want to. I just kind of weave it in and out. If you want to, you can, at some point kind of add a knot or tie it in somewhere if you want to. If you're afraid it's going to come undone, you could even take a needle and thread and kind of sew it to something. For the most part, I I kind of weave it in and out. This is going to be for my daughter. If I was going to sell it, I would probably just take a needle and thread and stitch it somewhere and make it really secure. But I typically just weave it in and out, and it's not a big deal. They don't normally pop out or show at all. So it looks just like that. I go back and find my other place where we started. Let's see, and you have your little tail. I do the same thing. I just weave it in and out. Okay, so now all we have to do is go ahead and add the bows, and it'll be the cutest hand knit bow blanket that you've ever seen. Okay, so to put the bows on the blanket, you want to go ahead and lay your blanket out on a large surface, like maybe your bed or kitchen table or dining room table, so that you can see the whole blanket laid out perfectly so that you can measure it. We're going to measure it to find the exact center so that we can space everything evenly. So I've measured mine with a tape measure. My blanket is about 5 feet long by 4 feet wide, and so I've used that to find the exact middle, which is marked up here. I know you can barely see it, but I marked it right here as the middle, and then I've marked other little spots where I know I want my bows to be. Now I marked all those spots with these little stitch markers that make it super easy to go back. You can kind of measure everything perfectly, put a stitch marker on it. It's kind of like a plastic safety pin. It just opens. They're real flexible. You put it on the yarn where you want it, and then you close it back. I will link these and all the supplies, like I said, in the description below this video. But once you have everything marked, you're just gonna add your ribbon. But what I did make sure is that like right here where it's marked, when I go up this row as I have bows, I made sure it stays on the same exact row. So that way it's not like kind of cockeyed as it goes up. It's staying exactly in the same column or like row all the way as it goes up until everything's really even. So for my ribbon, I found this really pretty kind of roughly white ribbon. It's what my daughter wanted. She wanted a hot pink blanket with white ribbon. I will link this ribbon as well. I kind of played around with some other scrap ribbon that I had and practiced tying like small bows versus big bows to see which one we liked better. And she liked this kind of medium size. And so I went ahead and cut my ribbon to 26 inches. If you want bigger bows than how mine end up looking, you might want to cut your ribbon longer. If you want small bows, cut your ribbon shorter. But it'd be good to kind of just play around with it and see what you want. Now this is temporary, so if you don't like where a bow is or you don't like how a bow looks, you can just undo it and take it off. So it's not the end of the world if you end up doing your first bow and it's too small or it's in the wrong place. We can just take it off. My last little note before I start tying all my bows is that once they're on the blanket, I'm going to go ahead and put fray check on the ends of each. And so that way if you see me doing it, you know what I'm doing. I'm going to do it at the very end. So you kind of just like unscrew it and you put it right along the end, and it kind of soaks in and it keeps it from unraveling once you're kind of using the blanket and it's being, moved around and touched more often. Now, I always recommend with fray check or anything that's like it to test it on a small little sample of your ribbon. Sometimes with like dark ribbons or grosgrain ribbon, it kind of just like sucks it up and it stays a darker color. I already tried it on this. It doesn't really alter it at all. Of course, it'll look dark at first because it's wet, but I would still test it on a tiny little scrap piece to make sure that once it's dried, you can't see it at all. So just a word of advice. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start tying my bows on here, and hopefully it'll go quickly and we'll be done soon. So what I'm going to do is you can kind of see right here, there's a way to go behind like two pieces. If you can see this, I know it's kind of hard. I'm kind of zoomed out so you can see what I'm doing. But if I do it like this behind two pieces, it's going to be pretty easy to see the back side of the bow, the ribbon on the back side, and it's going to be more obvious from the back. And there's no reason to really go through two. So I'm doing through one little piece, and there's kind of yarn behind it, so it's not going to be obvious from the back side. So just one little piece of yarn going under it. So hopefully you can see that now that the ribbon's there. One little piece of yarn. I'm going to go ahead and take my stitch marker off, move it to the side, and then you're just going to go ahead and tie a bow. So nothing fancy to it. Okay, just like that. I'll go back and do all the fray check at the end, make sure my ends are really good and even, and I'm just going to keep going and tying my bows. So now that I've done that spot, I'm just going to kind of pull it towards me. I have mine on the kitchen table and I'm standing at the end, so it's really easy to kind of pull it towards me and not have to like climb on top of the blanket. So I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to fold it up on itself a little bit so that it's not dragging on the floor. Okay, now that I'm done tying the bows, I'm going to go ahead and cut any little ends that I need to. If something's kind of already unraveling like this one, I'm going to cut it and make it real nice and then put my fray check on each little end. I'm going to kind of try and fold it up when it's done so it's not touching the yarn. That way it's not getting fray check on the yarn. It shouldn't mess up the yarn if it gets on it, but I'm just going to kind of leave it up a little bit. You could always do fray check on your ribbons before you tie them if you know that they're the length that you like it. I just didn't do it ahead of time, so totally up to you. Or like I said, you don't have to use a freight check at all, but a little bit goes a long way. You don't need to like do a ton on there. You're just doing the very, very ends. Okay friends, that's all there is to it. That is the easy way to make the cutest hand knit bow blanket. Like I said, I will link all the supplies I use in the description below this video. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and make sure you subscribe for more videos. Bye!
She's crafty and she knows it. She's crafty and she knows it. She's crafty and she knows. She's crafty and she knows.